Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be talking about the 2024 IDP Breakouts that you need to monitor. And with us today is a special guest making his first appearance with Front Office Pros, which is none other than Steve Hungarter, otherwise known as the IDP Hunter on Twitter. He was the Fantasy Pros ECR number 4 ranker for IDP. Pretty impressive, Steve. And he is a writer for the FantasySixPack and also IDP Guys. He also was recently selected into the Fantasy Sports Writing Association. Congrats on that, and welcome, Steve.
Thank you. Long-time listener, by the way. I'm so grateful and happy that you guys selected me for your show.
Oh, most definitely. We're glad to have you on.
Yeah, happy to hear you've been an avid listener of us.
Oh, yeah.
Hike!
So, guys, Steve, we were talking about this even before the show. This is ripe for the picking. Breakouts. People are snoozing right now. They're sleeping, they're snoozing. I don't got to worry about my team, but lo and behold, Steve, this is the time for us to be able to capitalize and look at some breakouts. We're going to look at some different categories, some guys who we felt like kind of turned it on late, guys who are injured, and then some young guys we think who could step up. So let's start off with a player who you think kind of turned it on late that you think could be a breakout for 2024.
Ain't that the truth? I mean, God bless any league that stays open all year round. I don't know why you would shut a league down, because this is the time to make your money. This is the time where I make a lot of trades, a lot of moves. In regards to your question, and that's an excellent question, who was a guy that started the year maybe not known but kind of picked the pace up as we went? And the answer to me is EJ Speed, no question. EJ Speed, let's break that down. Let's break that thought down. Shaq Leonard got cut by the Colts week 12. Okay, as soon as that happened, EJ Speed became a full-time starter. So for the 6 games he played, let's see, we had week 12, 13. He was on a bye 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. For those 6 games, we're going to use 1, 2, 3 scoring here. He scored 128 points in those 6 games, okay? Divide that by 6, you got 21.3, okay? That's LB2 on the season in 1, 2, 3 scoring, guys. The only guy he was behind, LB1, was Foyce Olakun at 21.8, okay? Now, if that was a full season body of work, that guy's an LB2. Just by contrast, I pulled Zaire Franklin's stats too. Zaire Franklin, for the same weeks, week 12, 13, 15 through 18, he only scored 79 points in 6 games, 13.2 points a game. Same scoring, he'd be an LB60. So you got one guy who was highly favored, a top-ranked guy in Zaire Franklin. You have a guy kind of sort of unknown, EJ Speed, and it looks like the roles have reversed.
I was just going to ask you that. So do you think heading into 2024 that Speed is going to – because, I mean, a lot of people were really excited about Zaire Franklin, really came on the scene after Shaq Leonard got injured, thought he was the guy. So are you starting to think now that Speed is now the guy you want in Indianapolis?
I do, and to be fair, I really think they're probably going to pick up another linebacker in a draft, maybe later on. I mean, this linebacker draft class, as you know, it's kind of a little bit watered down. But I think EJ Speed is going to have a bigger role this year. I'm expecting numbers like that. In fact, I made a trade for him in my 32-team league, and I traded stuff that's out the door, guys like Derek Barnes. In fact, I made the trade – and I gave the guy Derek Barnes right when he made that interception in the Lions-Bucks game. So that's the kind of guy I am. I buy him on the low, sell him on the high type of thing.
That's pretty smart. Seems like you treat your players like the stock market then.
You have to. You have to. And like I said, it's so fun this time of year because it's all a guessing game. It's all speculative. It's fun. I don't know why people shut down leagues, but, to each their own.
So, Joe, who do you have as your 2024 IDP breakout? A guy who you felt like maybe came on the scene a little bit this year?
Yeah, I'm going to stay at the linebacker position as well, and I'm going to go with Ivan Pace. He was a guy people had high hopes for in the training camp. This guy was an undrafted rookie, and once Jordan Hicks went down, Ivan Pace really came in and took over, and it was impressive. He had ended up with 63 tackles, 2.5 sacks, forced fumble to fumble recovery, as well as an interception. And I just feel like in this defensive scheme that he's in, the amount that they're going to blitz him, he reminds me a lot of a Jerome Baker in this system, with the Dolphins when Flores was there, and I think he's got good prowess for the future here.
You know what's interesting about Ivan Pace, and he's one of my breakouts too. Sleeper, he's only owned in 2% of leagues. I don't know what's going on. I noticed a trend in some of my leagues. Tell me if you guys think I'm right. Around week 16, when Jordan Hicks came back healthy, a lot of people were dropping him thinking that he wasn't going to be anything. Well, the Vikings changed their defensive format around. Instead of using that one true linebacker, they ended up bringing in 2 linebackers. Both, if you guys look at the numbers, both Hicks and Pace were getting stats those last couple of weeks of the season, and the safeties were actually suffering because of it. I guess a lot of people kind of don't care about the season once they're eliminated from the playoffs. So Ivan Pace is a sneaky pickup right now.
My only pushback with you on this, guys, is I think he could be relevant next year. But do you really think he's relevant beyond that, though? I mean, we are talking about it is 2024. I guess maybe I'm talking too soon. We are talking 2024. We're not talking 2026. But I guess I'm going in dynasty. Is this really just a 2024 year, and then afterwards you get rid of him after that?
Well, I think so, because Hicks is a free agent next year, so there's a solid chance that he's going to be a young, brand new player. And even before we were really looking at Pace, we'll go back to the preseason. They were already grooming him to be the green dot. So
for me, for my IDP breakout, and this guy, is more of a disappointment, to be honest with you, than a guy who came on the scene. But I'm going to go with defensive end Gregory Rousseau, a former first-round pick out of Miami U. He had a mediocre season with the Buffalo Bills this season. In 16 games, he had 42 total tackles, 5 sacks, led the Bills from the edge rushers with 36 hurries. Thing is, though, he had a foot injury, and it lingered on him, and I think it impacted his effectiveness this season. The Bills have a decision on Rousseau this offseason on whether or not they're going to pick up his 5th-year option. I got to tell you guys, I'm leaning towards I think they're going to decline. I just don't think they're going to pay him the franchise tag number for edge rushers. I don't think he's worth that. So they may flat out extend him before that. They may decline it and then extend him. I could definitely see that happening. But if not, he's going to be an improve-it year. The downside with the Bills' defensive line is they're known to rotate. That's the big thing against them, right? But Rousseau overall had a total of 585 total snaps, which ranked 56 among fellow defensive ends, and he led the team. I think the Bills are going to be using him more, though. They're in some serious cap trouble, which they should be able to change around, but I don't know if they're going to have the depth. That's my concern. Leonard Floyd's a free agent, A.J. Epinesa a free agent, and Shaq Lawson's a free agent. So if they don't get the depth that they need to do the rotation, they may just have to rely on Rousseau to play a ton of snaps. So as a result, I think he could take that next step forward. You probably can get him a little bit more on the cheap. So I'm going to roll the dice and go after Greg Rousseau.
You nailed it. I mean, look at all the free agents out the door. Von Miller's an older dude. Like, who else do they have there? So I'm expecting a higher uptick in play with him as well.
I was surprised you went with this one, Steve. You had picked him to be a 2023 breakout as well. Didn't quite happen for you this year. Kind of surprised you're going back to the well for next year.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. I did put him as my 2023 breakout, and now that you mention it, but I think it's just one of those things I'm still holding on hope. Maybe Joe, the difference between you and me, the rope is going through my hands, and I'm like holding on for dear life. You're like, let it go. You are much more likely to just let a guy go. I hold on for dear life, usually for too long when the guy is, no longer any good.
So the same question back to you then. You were concerned about my Ivan Pace. But for Rousseau, you just like him for this year? Or what about the years following? You're saying not sure if the Bills are going to pick up his 5th-year option, which means he's a potential to move on if they don't extend him to be the Bills. Does that concern you moving forward?
Ooh, Joe, coming right back at me here. Here's the thing. You make a good point. You do. I think the Bills, they don't really have any long-term plans, and he's a great run defender. I think the Bills will want to keep him. I just don't think they want to pay him top dollar, and maybe he would have to test the market if there's a conflict because they're not going to tag him. So it really depends. I don't know. He may test the market, may not do as well, and may sign more of a team-friendly deal, to be honest with you. It's hard to say. I think the Bills would want to keep him. I just don't know if they're going to agree as far as payment. And if they do, I mean, Von Miller, like you mentioned, Von Miller, I mean, he'll probably be gone after next year. they have nobody in the defensive end reserves. They're going to need this guy. So, and he's got talent. I mean, he really does. He's got a lot of potential. So heading over to some injured players from 2023, hoping to make a comeback in 2024. Who do you got, Steve?
That's a great question, too, because when you think of breakouts, and a little cheat for the audience at home, I love to go on my little sleeper app, little hack I like to do. I'll go to IR, I'll go to the last season, 2023 season, and I'll click ADP, and I'll scroll all the way down. I'm like, what happened to this guy? What happened to this guy? What happened to this guy? When you say IR and we're talking about breakouts, to me, no question, Troy Anderson. No question. Let's break that down, okay? Troy Anderson was a second-round pick out of Montana State, so he's got the high draft capital. Teams don't like to waste draft capital, right? He's got nothing but job security there. Opportunity, okay? 2002 draft, go back 2 seasons, he was the third best linebacker behind Quay Walker and Delvin Lloyd. They went the first round. He went the second round, okay? He's a beast. He was 6'4", 235 pounds, 4.42 speed in the 40. Does everything you want out of the linebacker. And I'll give you one more point when considering Troy Walker, because you can't help but think that guy's going to be a top 15 player. I mean, you can't help but think that, right? Look what Nate Landman did this year. 110 total tackles, 66 being solo, and 1, 2, 3 scoring. You get 2 points. That's where I play a lot, 1, 2, 3 scoring. You get 2 points per tackle. You can't help but think that he would either be equal to that or exceed that due to his athletic profile.
So here's my concern with that pick there, Steve. With Arthur Smith no longer as the head coach and Ryan Nielsen, I believe is his name, the defensive coordinator, now heading to Jacksonville, you're talking about a completely different staff. And with that new staff, I believe when it comes to – I'm a firm believer when you have a coaching regime change, everything's up for grabs. Because at the end of the day, that coach did not have that his say as far as that player. Now, Terry Fontenot is still going to be there. He was the GM who drafted him. But let's say Bill Belichick goes in there.
Okay.
Who knows with Bill Belichick and the linebackers? That's usually a nightmare when it comes to Bill Belichick. So I have my reservations. I totally understand what you're saying. I get the thought process. It'll be very interesting to see who the coach is and even the defense, because I want to say they were in a 3-4 base. If they even switch to a 4-3 and he has to cover more, what does that look like?
Well, Ryan Nielsen wasn't there either when he got drafted either. So, this is a guy on the shelf.
That's true.
This was a guy as a breakout, highly coveted. I mean, for anybody to just let a guy who's a second-round pick just sit on the bench collecting dust, knowing that he can do. I mean, I'm looking at that roster. Nate Landman is also a free agent, so he's likely going to go sign a deal somewhere, okay? All they have is Caden Ellis. I mean, he's on a 3-year deal. So him and Troy Anderson, that was supposed to be the dream last year. That was supposed to be a setup. I do think in 2024, I would like to think that would be the setup. But you're right. No telling who the coach is. Bill Belichick, no telling what he wants to do. We don't know who it's going to be. So it's a question mark. But again, this is the offseason. These are where we build these teams.
I think it could be certainly a gamble. Joe, where do you stand? Do you think it's more of a gamble, or you feel like it's a lock?
I don't know if it's as much of a gamble as you make it. I know it's risky with new coaches, changing hands and coming in. But I think the fact that the GM is still there, and like you said, that second round draft capital as well, I think the coaches will figure out how to use them. And I don't know, Troy Anderson is a guy I really liked, and unfortunately got injured. He was one of my breakout picks. And Steve, at that time, you weren't even a big fan of Troy Anderson then. I kind of had to sell you on him. So I'm not surprised you're still a little risky on this 2024 breakout call out.
I don't know. He's a former quarterback. I don't know. I know he's a converted linebacker. I have my reservations. But who do you have as your injured player, Joe? You think you could make a bounce back?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Nakobe Dean. He was a 3rd-round draft pick in the 2022 NFL draft. We've seen this guy have some flashes, did have the injury. Now I'm a little concerned, moving forward with this Liz Frank toe injury. But outside of that, I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles just need somebody at linebacker. Shaq Leonard, they brought in, most likely isn't going to stick around. Had the legs of a Nick Morrow as another fill-in guy. So they don't really have like a long-term answer there. Nakobe Dean should be able to jump in and get playing time. And when he's had the chances, he has shown flashes. And talk about a guy with just the speed and, a playmaker when he played at Georgia as well.
And we remember too, even in the beginning of the training camp, we had heard that he was getting the green dot, so everything was lined up for Nakobe Dean to have a huge season. Then he unfortunately had that injury. Like you said, a lot of linebackers are going to be free agents there. Philly doesn't usually prioritize the linebacker position. At least Howie Roseman hasn't for quite some time, unless he's changing of the guard. And now he wants to have maybe Jeremiah Trotter. Who knows? I mean, he was his father was quite the legend.
Yep.
Back in Philadelphia. Who knows? But I like the call, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like one thing. I feel like there's not many teams out there that value the linebacker position anymore. I feel like a lot of teams are kind of not prioritizing them in like free agency, and they're kind of just trying to develop guys and snag these guys in the draft.
Steve, I've only known you for so long, but you're awfully quiet over there, which is unlike you.
I'm just listening to what he's saying, and it's absolutely true. It's music to my ears. I'm listening to sound. It's like running back, linebacker, they're often forgotten, are they not? It's almost like they don't even want to play these guys. They don't want to pay these guys. ACL tears, once guys are coming off that, moving back and forth, it's very shifty. So I guess teams, like you said, they'd rather get somebody young in the draft and groom them than pay a free agent. And there's a ton this year. There's a ton. So you're absolutely right. That's just a forgotten position because, just the way teams are building their rosters now.
So my injured player that this is a roll the dice, guys. I got to tell you, this is not a guy I feel extremely confident in, but I think it's worth the risk. And that's going to be defensive end David Ojabo. He's a talented edge rusher coming out of Michigan. He was going to be a first-round pick. Unfortunately, he tore his Achilles, which forced him into the second round. Then he partially tore his ACL. So now he's had 2 shortened NFL seasons. Ojabo 6'4", 265. He's got the ideal size of speed combination. Tearing his Achilles and ACL is not ideal. I mean, I'm trying to think, but the last one that I can remember is maybe Carl Lawson who did that, and that didn't really bode well for him either. But Jadeveon Clowney, Kyle Van Noy, Tyus Bowser, all those guys are going to be free agents this offseason. I do think the Ravens have a knack for developing edge rushers. I do think that they want Odafe Owe and David Ojabo to be their 2 bookends. In the opener, we saw Ojabo had a sack and a forced fumble. I still believe in his talent. I'm willing to take the gamble on him if that owner who has Ojabo has lost faith.
I mean, look at Ojabo. I mean, when he came out, his profile was he's hurt. He's going to need time to develop. And I'm not sure, you have to look at the stats, but I think that first game he played, he did get a sack, if I'm not mistaken.
He did, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just a reoccurring injury. With these guys here, we're taking shots in the offseason. Injury tags, they're injured for a reason. So, this is where you start making your dart throws and call your shots.
Yeah, I like the dart throw, Steve. I mean, all these guys can be risky coming off of injury, but I always had high hopes for Ojabo, coming out of Michigan and reuniting with Mike McDonald, who was the defensive coordinator while he was at Michigan as well. Just unfortunately, had the Achilles injury, now the knee injury. But if he comes back, I mean, he's still got the bend and the ability to get sacks.
You know what the key word was there? Coming out of Michigan. That was the key word. Here you go, Blue fandom is showing. But I'll tell you what, though, hot take. I thought Ojabo was going to be better than Hutchinson. Before the Achilles and everything, I actually thought Ojabo was the better prospect.
I think he just had the flashy plays. He had the twitch. Just Hutchinson's just a grinder in that effort, and he's that Max Crosby type guy. He doesn't have the twitch or the bend. He's just learning how to do a spin move, which he now has got 3 sacks in these playoffs. But that's really the difference.
I was just going to say the same thing. I mean, if it wasn't for the injury tag, what if? But yeah, he was highly, highly coveted coming out of school. And you know what else too? Certain teams just draft really well, don't they? The Ravens just kill drafts. Remember when they took Lamar and they took him at the end of first, everybody's shaking their head. The Ravens know something that the rest of the league don't know. There's like 4 or 5 teams that do that. So I'm highly on Ravens players. I really am. So you're on to something there, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. And heading into our last segment, we're going to be talking about some youngsters who we think are going to be taking the next step in their career, possibly as a full-time starter or someone who just really becomes a star. So, Steve, who is that player for you? I think we may have heard this guy before.
Yeah, and it's Trenton Simpson. And let me explain. We just talked about the Ravens. When he was coming out of college, he was a 6'2" guy out of Clemson, 238 pounds, 4.43 speed at the combine. Everybody had him profiled as either their LB3 or their LB4, right behind guys like Jack Campbell, Drew Sanders, and Henley of the Chargers. He was a guy that was in everybody's rankings. The problem is he went to the Ravens, and we know this. They have two Pro Bowl linebackers in front of him, Queen and Roquan Smith. So he didn't get any playing time. If you do the math on it, it's like 2% here, 9% here. So he had 20 snaps all year. And then when week 18 happened, all hell broke loose. Okay. Week 18 happens. They're playing the Steelers. They got the first seed. And most people don't even pay attention to this, but they're gonna rest their starters. Okay. So the guy who only got 20 snaps this year ends up getting 26 snaps, and he goes off. He goes off on the Steelers, and they lost the game, but who cares? But at least we got a glimpse of this guy, okay? This guy scored. He got 7 tackles, 6 solos, 1 assist, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, 1 QB hit. I don't know what scoring you guys playing, but I like to go to 1, 2, 3 a lot. That's 20.6 points per game out of a guy who that was his first true opportunity. So I'm expecting that to carry over into next season, especially with the situation with Queen being a free agent. I'm expecting Trenton Simpson to get a lot more snaps, playing time, and I'm expecting him to be a household name.
Steve, I got to say, this one definitely slipped under my radar here. I did not realize that he had the impact that he did. I knew that he was obviously, behind on the depth chart, so we didn't really see much of him, but I didn't realize that in the limited action he had, he did as well as he did. I'm with you. I think Patrick Queen, who honestly was in really kind of bust territory and then all of a sudden had a resurgent year this year, no way he stays with Baltimore. I think Patrick Queen is gone. Obviously, they spent all this money with Roquan Smith. I highly doubt that they're going to spend money for both of them. They got Simpson in the pipeline, just like you said, so that he could step in and take over the role. That happens all the time. When we saw that should have been a clear indicator. I thought Simpson was going to take over this year, but Queen had other plans. So I'm with you. I think he's going to step right in.
Much like Ivan Pace, these guys just started producing at the end of the year, week 17, week 18. Most casual fans check out at the end of the year, and they're not looking at these stats. But that is a good segue for next year.
Yeah, definitely. Like you, Steve, I didn't recognize type of game that he had in week 18 there. But hey, like you said, the other Steve, it's week 18. A lot of people are sleeping. You're paying attention, and the rewards will go to the people that are still paying attention here and planning for the future. But yeah, Simpson is a guy that we both liked and did think that he was going to supplant Queen this year. But obviously, him having the year he did, that wasn't going to happen.
So, Joe, who's that youngster that you think is going to take that next step in the 2024 season?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Drew Sanders. He was drafted in the 3rd round. People were surprised he slipped that far, thought he was a potential first-round talent possibly. And, Josie Jewell is now a free agent. I'd be surprised if the Broncos bring him back. And they really need, a linebacker to step up. Alex Singleton's there, leads the team in tackles. He's really good in run support, but he's not good against, in the passing game and coverage. And that's really where I think Drew Sanders could fill in and help in the coverage for the Broncos. And they honestly just need somebody with some more speed as well to kind of go sideline to sideline as well. So I think Drew Sanders look at bump in playing time in 2024 and be a potential player.
I like Drew Sanders a lot. He's a guy that I had pretty highly ranked on my draft board because everything that I saw of him reminded me of the Demario Davis that Sean Payton had in New Orleans. So, because he has that ability to blitz, he used to be a former edge rusher. So I thought for sure that he would get used. I was shocked as to how much he wasn't used. Are you concerned at all as to how lost? I mean, he looked lost out there, as you would know as a Broncos fan. So, I mean, you think just having another year with the Vance Joseph defense, I don't believe that he'll be going anywhere. He would have been dismissed by now. Do you think he'll feel a lot better heading into the, going through OTAs and the offseason program?
Yeah, I think so. You're definitely not wrong. He definitely looked lost, early on in the season when he had some playing time. They actually also messed around with him being an edge rusher as well. So it is interesting, you bring that up with Demario Davis and his blitzing ability and whatnot. But I do think, with another training camp in Vance Joseph's system, and I think too, just Vance Joseph himself and his scheme that he wanted to go through, went through a lot this season and had to change things up midseason with the Broncos to get them to playing better. So I think now that he's kind of solidified himself and in the training camp, Sanders can learn and continue to grow. And I think he'll be ready for the moment this time.
Yeah, agreed. If Van Joseph was to get fired, it would have been after that 70-point stinker against the
Right.
Dolphins. He makes it through that, he'll make it through anything. He'll make it through a tornado, a hurricane, storm. But back to Singleton. Alex Singleton, and I'm so great that guy finally had a season. Historically, one stat I love to look at, advanced stats, average depth per tackle, because it says a lot about a player. Is he making stats? Is he making a tackle at the 1 yard line? Or is he making stats getting drugged down the field at the 7 yard line? A lot of Alex Singleton's career stats, he's getting drugged down the field. Like I said, he's not maybe an actual real life player, but he's a really good fantasy asset. And it's so great he put it together. But he's older. Look at how old he is. He's a bit older now. He's longer in the tooth. Jules probably gone. I don't know why they keep him around. They're going to have to groom and figure out how they want to employ Drew Sanders. So that's a heck of a steal.
That's interesting about that stat. Didn't know that. Well, I'm going to finally join you guys. You guys have been talking about linebackers enough. I better start talking about one myself. So the youngster I think is going to take a step forward here. It's going to be linebacker Christian Harris. He's entering his third season. And he's become quite the story on these playoffs after we saw the highlight of him and head coach D'Amico Ryans. He was coaching Christian Harris. I'm sure we've all seen it on the sideline, which led him to intercepting Joe Flacco and bringing him to the house. Harris played 16 games in this season, and he racked up 101 tackles, 65 solo in his second season in the NFL. In our league, I don't know where he ranked in your leagues there, Steve, but he finished as a linebacker 43, so not enough to really say that you're going to start this guy. Blake Cashman, Denzel Perryman, and Neville Hewitt are all going to be free agents this offseason. I think we possibly saw a star in the making this playoff, so I think he's going to take that momentum and bring it into 2024. I think you could just tell that through that coaching with D'Amico Ryans, I think in that second season, I think he's going to rely very heavily. I mean, D'Amico Ryans was a former linebacker himself, also played at the University of Alabama. So I just see there's going to be a lot of value there. I think there's a lot of trust there. I think he can take the next step forward.
I was trying to pull some data on him, but if you guys were to look, yeah, there he is. If you guys were to look at his last couple games of the season, that's where Christian Harris shows his worth. Like, I had to look at it because, that whole Texan linebacker core was all over the place,
Oh, yeah.
But week 16, 5 tackles, 2 assists. Okay. Week 17, 3-2. Week 18 is where he went off. 7 solos, 5 assists, 1 tackle for a loss, 1 sack. Okay, so those are signs for good things to come. And actually, 1, 2, 3, 4. In the last 5 games, he's had three 7 tackle or more games. So yeah, they're using Harris now. I know we did this last year, so I'm a little skittish, but it looks like he's on the rise.
It might be just because San Francisco sort of rotated their linebackers, I want to say, because it was mostly Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner, and then Aziz Al-Shaair kind of rotated it a little bit over time. But, I do think that, Harris will be the long-standing veteran, believe it or not, because I think all those other guys are going to go unless they bring somebody else in. So I think Harris could take that next step. What do you think, Joe? You agree with me?
Yeah. I like your call. I definitely think he can take the next step, and I feel like we're seeing the progression late, seeing it in the playoffs. His ability to sit underneath these routes too in coverage has been impressive, but he's even getting after it and blitzing and getting the sack in the playoffs too. So definitely like his upside with everything that he's able to do.
So that does it for our 2024 IDP Breakout. Steve, it was a pleasure having you on. Where can others find your great work?
Thank you. Guys, I'm a writer over at IDP Guys, but right now I just did my 2024 IDP rankings over at the FantasySixPack. Check that out. And I'll be doing my rookie content and my waiver articles throughout the season over there.
Awesome. And if you don't follow him already, go ahead and follow him at the IDP Hunter. He's on the hunt and the prowl to figure out who is the best at best rankings for defense in 2024. You're not going to want to miss it. We're going to have videos, podcasts, whatever you listen to. We're going to have content all throughout the offseason. We're going to be talking about free agency, the draft, the combine. You're not going to want to miss it. So make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.